Okay, so this is an example of the article presentation that I would like you to do. The article that I'm going to present is entitled Children at the Border, the Crisis That America Wasn't Prepared For, and it was published in The Guardian a few months ago in June of this year. The first thing I would like you to do is to explain the reason why you chose this article. In my case, well, it's basically because this issue of immigration has hit the headlines, both in Europe, especially because of the migration crisis in the Mediterranean, and also, of course, in the US with the problems at the Mexican US border. This is what this article talks about. The situation of the immigrants, especially children and families, at the Mexican and American border. I would also like you to talk a little bit about the structure of the article. So basically, this article gives a general description of the situation. It also explains a little bit the difference between the immigrants that used to come in the past and those that are coming nowadays. Then it moves on to explain the circumstances under which migrants have to live in the detention centers at the border, and finally gives a kind of explanation of why this is happening. Also, first of all, as regarding the immigrants that are coming into the US, basically nowadays the majority are families and a lot of children, as opposed to what was happening 15 or 20 years ago, where the majority of the migrants were single males. Yeah. Also, most of these migrants are coming from Central American countries, where the economic situation, is becoming really, really bad. As opposed to what the Trump administration is trying to make us believe, the number of migrants is nowadays significantly lower than at the beginning of the century. The article later describes the terrible conditions that all these migrants have to endure, and focuses on the situation of children. The facilities, as they were designed for people that were basically males, are not designed for this new immigration, especially for children. According to as the law establishes in the US, that children shouldn't be detained for longer than 72 hours in one of these facilities, but the several volunteer lawyers and doctors and non-profit organizations have actually looked into the system and have found that the law is basically broken all the time, and often these children stay in these detention facilities for as long as 2 or 3 weeks. The consequence of this is that several minors, actually 5 or 6, have died in the past few months in these detention centers. And this, of course, goes against a legal protection act that is called the Forest Agreement, that establishes that children have to be kept in safe and healthy conditions. Also, for a long time, children have been separated from their families, and although the Trump administration has actually issued a new order preventing that from happening, the truth is that it's not all. There are some circumstances under which separation is still allowed. And finally, the article is critical to this situation, and basically explains that this is happening because basically the Trump administration is trying to deter people from coming to the country and asking for asylum, and they would have the resources and the money to change that situation. And also is connected to the political momentum. because according to the polls, basically a majority of Republicans are actually um, happy or with this kind of immigration policies, and they would vote for Trump again. And this is why the situation is not actually being changed. And well, after you finish your presentation, I would like you to think of maybe a couple of questions to prompt discussion in class. So, for example, I could ask you, do you think that the situation in Spain and Europe is similar to what is happening in the US? And another question could be, do you think that we can actually cope with all these immigrants coming into our countries? What could be done, okay, to basically improve the situation? And then I would, at the end, in the article, I would also like you to include a glossary, okay, with the words that you think are, well, maybe relevant for the article, or maybe words that are not very common, that you didn't know, that are basically useful, including also collocations.